Take it away.
Okay, welcome everybody. We are broadcasting from 125 Live in Rochester, Minnesota, a Center for Active Adults, and we are kicking off a monthly segment called AARP Presents. My name is Walt Rothwell. I'm a volunteer both at 125 and with AARP. And today's presentation is going to be done by our Minnesota AARP Speakers Bureau. And I want to introduce to you two people from AARP. Meghan Redmond is the Senior Program Specialist based in St. Paul, and she coordinates the volunteer speakers with AARP. And today's presenter is Bill Raker, who I've come to know over the last year when I've been part of the group, and I've learned a tremendous amount from Bill in just a year's time, and so will you today. Bill has had a long career in business, and in particular, he spent 20 years as the CEO of the first credit union that was founded in Minnesota. That business was founded in 1925. Bill has since retired and is very active in the community doing a whole variety of volunteer activities, but he has tremendous expertise in banking and financial issues and is an award-winning businessman at the state, national, and international level. So literally, Bill is a Hall of Fame financial person. So we're so pleased to have him here today. We are going to record this. We encourage you to submit questions. Feel free to put them into chat, or there may be time for some back and forth after Bill's finished. So thank you, Bill. Welcome.
Well, Walt, thank you for that introduction. Very nice introduction. In fact, I think you probably set the bar for me higher than it should be for this presentation, but happy to be with you this morning. Good morning, everybody. And as Walt mentioned, I have a long career in finances and retired at the end of 2018. But I was not CEO of the credit union from 1925 until 2018. Sorry. Anyway, happy to be with you this morning, and we're going to talk about cyber crime. And if you'll bear with me just a little bit until I can get my slide presentation up and running, we'll be ready to go. So, all right, here we are. Let's see, I need to do that. So when we hear or see the word cybercrime, we usually think of the data breaches at Experian and Target of a few years ago, or we often read stories about schools and hospitals and government agencies like cities being hacked and their files held for ransom. Or maybe we think about the recent headlines of the Russians hacking the SolarWinds software that infected thousands of businesses and government sites. But you and I are also, as individuals, subject to being victims of cybercrime. And what exactly is cybercrime? Well, quite simply, it's this. Any criminal or illegal activity that involves the internet or a computer, usually both, is a cybercrime. So we're going to talk about that today and learn how to protect ourselves from becoming such victims. A reminder, as Walt said, we'll make time at the end for questions, so please put your questions in the chat box, or you can hold them and ask them live once we've concluded the presentation. Identity theft and other forms of online fraud pose a serious and growing threat throughout the United States. Throughout the world, in fact, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Scammers are always getting better. They're always getting trickier, more aggressive, and more numerous as more opportunities become available for them to target victims. How widespread is this? Well, according to the FBI, in 2019, there were over 467,000 online fraud complaints, amounting to a total loss of over $3.5 billion. And that was just the instances that were reported. And there was much more, maybe double that never got reported. So clearly, the internet is a gold mine for scam artists, and the number of people who get caught in the scammers net seems to grow every year. And criminals continue to use a variety of scams to defraud internet users, ranging from simple fraud to complex hacking. But you don't have to become one of their victims, and we're going to explore how not to become a victim. So here's our agenda for the presentation today. This presentation is meant to help you understand some of the basic precautions that you can take that may make you less likely to become a victim of cybercrime. Now, it's not going to make you 100% safe. I wish we could. But adhering to these steps is just the beginning of the process of trying to make yourself a harder target for criminals to exploit. In this presentation, we'll talk about practices you should develop to keep your personal information private online, and how to avoid losing control of your social media accounts to cybercriminals. We'll also talk about how to bank safely online, which is becoming more popular every day. We'll give you some helpful things to look for to help you recognize and counter phishing messages. And we'll give you a resource reference list for additional information and help that you can get with scam and fraud issues and questions. I would note that some of our material today may not seem that interesting or exciting to some of you, or you may think, well, I already knew that, or I've heard that many times before. Okay, this then is encouragement for you to become more diligent in following these points for protecting yourself on the internet. So let's get started. We call the habits and the precautions you need to adopt in your online life your cyber hygiene. Exercising good cyber hygiene should help you reduce your risks no matter what you're doing on the internet. The best way to avoid trouble on the internet, obviously, is to stay away from the locations where trouble is often found. While this probably isn't much of a problem for many of us personally, it's interesting that visiting children or grandchildren can always ask to use your computer and still expose you to problems. Historically, websites that deal in things like pornography, online gambling, unofficial mobile device application stores, and pirated games are all prone to host harmful malware or viruses. That's not to say, however, that you can't get bad stuff from any other website, just that these types of sites are often found to harbor malware and other bad things. And cyber criminals tend to hang together, so avoid trouble by not visiting sites that cater to them, like hacking forums or the dark websites. As you can see on this slide, there are three levels of the web: the surface web that we use, the deep web, where it's not available to most of us, and then the dark web, where you have to have a special browser even to get into that. And it's mostly populated by those who deal in illegal activities like drugs and things like that. So here's what we need to do, and this is basically the crux of our presentation today, is to limit the personal information that we make available on the web, especially on the social media sites, to what we absolutely need to put out there. That includes any profile information used to identify yourself on social media. And we'll talk more about social media in a few minutes. But remember, posting your day-to-day activities and personal or family information to publicly available social media sites like Facebook may seem natural, it may seem like fun, everybody's doing it, but you are giving anyone with bad intentions access to information that can be used to target you or your connections. You know, most of us have heard enough horror stories and warnings to develop sort of a sixth sense of what may be dangerous. So listen to that little voice in the back of your head that tries to warn you when you're about to do something unsafe. So let's look into how to stay safe online. Remember that even if you follow the safe browsing rules, others that you allow to use your computer may not. This, as I've mentioned, applies especially to visiting kids, grandkids, or anyone else who's in your home who may unintentionally navigate to dangerous websites, which could put your computer system in harm's way. The major browsers that most people use, like Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Safari, or Firefox, have logic to warn you if you go to a website that may be unsafe. If you get one of those warnings when you're browsing the internet, don't go to that site unless you're absolutely sure you know what it is. And here's another hint. If you get a pop-up message asking you to allow a new program to install, don't ever press OK unless you have asked for it or that you know what it is supposed to do. A good rule of thumb is this. If you didn't ask for it, delete it. That goes for anything you receive, an unsolicited email, a text message, or any application. Many hackers, unfortunately, will try to capitalize on your confusion at receiving an unsolicited email or text to install unwanted harmful malware. Here's another thing to consider about your computer system. If you don't use it, remove it. We should periodically go through our computer's list of installed applications and software and see what programs we have. And if we don't know what it is, we should consider removing it. It may be a Trojan, a virus, or some other malware application that's monitoring our activity. An increasing number of sites are offering means of protecting your accounts in addition to the standard passwords we all use, and we're going to talk a lot about passwords in a minute. These enhanced protection programs will send you a text or email with a confirmation you enter after you enter your password. It's usually a 4 or 6-digit number. Other sites ask for secret questions that theoretically only you know the answers to. You answer the questions like the name of your favorite teacher, I like to use that one, or the make and model of your first car, if you happen to remember that one. Or here's one I hope we all remember, is where did you meet your spouse? Those are all good secret questions to have as a second verification that you are who you say you are. And then, of course, periodically change your password or secure questions to make things a little more secure. And once a year is a good starting point to go in and do those things. And don't forget to change any password that you think has been compromised. If you've been on a website and you think you've been compromised, you should immediately change the password that lets you access that particular application. So let's talk about password security. I hope none of you have any passwords that look anything like these on this slide. It's tempting, but we shouldn't be doing it because exploiting easily guessed passwords is the quickest and most common way hackers gain access to your accounts. The 2 steps of using strong passwords and changing them frequently still remain the 2 best things you can do to safeguard your accounts online. All right, let's take a look at this. Every year, a security company called Splash Data publishes a list of the top 100 worst passwords it has encountered in the past 12 months. Year after year, the top 2 passwords using sequential numbers remain unchanged. Look at number 1 and number 2. And then, of course, all the rest of them follow a similar kind of pattern. And I want to repeat this warning. Exploiting easily guessed passwords is the quickest and most common way hackers gain access to your accounts. We may know this, but do we consistently practice good cyber hygiene with respect to choosing our passwords? I know we want passwords. I'm like this too. We want passwords that are easy to remember, which makes them easy for the scammer or hacker to discover and exploit to your detriment. So how do we get stronger passwords? What makes a strong password? Emphasizing the basics of personal cybersecurity will most likely make a cyber criminal look for an easier target. One way we do this is to use strong, complex passwords or passphrases that we change frequently, and they're not used on more than one site or application. Talk some more about that. US government guidelines suggest a phrase-based password to avoid easily guessing dictionary words. Something like using the first letters of each word in a phrase you can easily remember, and I'll show you an example of that on the next slide when this comes up. Adding more numbers or special characters at the end of your password will make it even stronger and harder to guess. Continuing to look at what makes a strong password. We recommend using a password management program that can help you with this. All of the reputable password management vendors offer free or low-cost versions online. Good choices include like 1Password, Keeper, Norton, or RoboForm, and there are several others. We don't have any specific recommendations. But we do recommend that you consider the pay version, since they offer more automated features that make the application easier to use. And many of these password managers integrate to your browser, which is important and helpful, and they will automatically fill in your user ID and password. They can also help you generate strong passwords. They all will encrypt your password file and store the file either on your device or in the cloud. No matter which application you choose, though, it will probably require a master password to access the program. Make sure this master password isn't easily guessed, as this will then open all your passwords up to whoever can access the program. And don't forget or lose the master password. So you'll notice on this slide in the red lettering, there's an expression, and this illustrates what I talked about in the earlier slide. AARP is #1 in fighting fraud in Minnesota State. And so you translate that into a password that looks like this: capital A, little I, £, the #1, little I, capital F, little I, capital M, capital S, exclamation point. That's a really complex and strong password that you shorten from the expression that it comes from. So let's look at some other security tips. Using what we are calling two-factor authentication on applications that offer this additional security feature, especially on social media and financial applications, is a must. Social media and financial applications should employ two-factor authentication. Now, you probably already use two-factor security without realizing. Most online banks require you to answer the secret questions that we mentioned before, or they ask you to give them a cell phone number to use so that they can text you a 4 or 6-digit communication number before you log in. So that's two-factor authentication. It uses your user ID and your password as one, and it uses a security question or the code that they'll text to you as the second step in the two-factor authentication. And more popular programs like Facebook and Twitter are using similar methods to help prevent accounts from being hacked. And so we strongly suggest that you make it a practice to use two-factor authentication wherever it's offered. Here's something else that's important. Keep all of the applications, the operating systems, and security software like antivirus and anti-malware applications current on your computer through routine updating. So here's what you should do if you haven't already done this. Turn on automatic updates on applications is the easiest way to do this. If your computer uses Windows 10 as an example, it comes set to automatically install the updates. But if automatically updating isn't offered or it isn't reliable, you can always schedule a time to routinely check for updates to your programs manually. Now, here's something else that we rarely think of, but it's very important. Outdated hardware increases security risks. If your modem or your router or even your computer is more than 5 years old, please consider replacing it, even if it seems to still work fine. Part of the problem is the companies that maintain these software programs stop supporting them after a period of time, and the security updates are no longer available to you. So if any of these hardware devices are more than 5 years old, consider replacing them and upgrading them to ones that are more current and have stronger safety security features embedded in them. Now, we'll say this again, we said it once before, don't use the same password or user ID across multiple websites. Password reuse is one of the first things hackers test when they get hold of one user ID or one password combination. If they get the password on one of your applications, one of your websites, and it's repeated on others, they're going to be able to exploit that with very little effort. And so it's important to have different ones that you use on different applications, especially the social media ones and the financial applications, as we mentioned before. Because if one of those reused or repeated passwords is compromised, then all of the others are too. And as I said, this is especially important, vital in fact, for any applications or social media uses that you do. So let's continue to look at some precautions to help you stay safe on social media. These days it's difficult for us to stay off the social media platforms. So that being the case, let's look at how to protect our privacy and identity from fraudsters when we go on those sites. Most of the hints we've talked about so far clearly apply to social media accounts as well as email and texting. Some specific social media related warnings are also in order though, and let's talk about those. Be aware, however, that there is no 100% effective way that we know right now to secure your social media accounts, but these hints that we're offering will help. First of all, don't friend people unless you actually know them in some way. Accept connection requests only from people you actually know well enough to trust. Here's a hint. Think of accepting connections or friending someone as the cyber equivalent of letting them into your house. Would you let people you don't know and who you have no real common interest or other reason to associate with into your living room? I hope not. Also, be skeptical and wary of unsolicited connection requests. There are people on many social media who try to amass as many contacts or friends as possible. And you always hear, so-and-so has 500,000 followers on Twitter, or they have, so many thousands or millions of followers on Facebook or someplace like that. Some sites, like the business-oriented site LinkedIn, even encourages this behavior by offering little badges or other rewards for people who participate in LinkedIn and have large networks. But I suggest avoid being a trophy connection for someone else, and don't engage in this dangerous behavior yourself, because the more followers you have, the more friends that you have, the more people around the world that are seeing information about you, which may or may not be private identity kinds of information, but they are aware of what you're doing. So be very careful who you friend, be very careful what you put out there. Here's another hint. Don't allow applications to use your location, contacts list, or data without very careful consideration. This is especially dangerous with mobile devices like your smartphone or iPad, because they can post your location automatically using the phone's GPS. And sharing your contacts or data with applications you commonly use may seem to be harmless or benign, but it might allow a cyber criminal a portal to your associates or personal data if that application is compromised. You know, often when we go to a website for the first time, it may ask us to sign in using one of the social media platforms. So please don't use join with Facebook or similar shortcuts to share or link your accounts. It may make it easier to share your network news with your Facebook connections, but it also can provide an easy path into your other accounts if one of them is compromised. And this is happening in the background, and you don't even know it's happening until you get a danger sign later down the road. Public Wi-Fi scams. Let's talk more about scams that can occur when you're using a public Wi-Fi site. The most common is probably what we call the man-in-the-middle scam, and here's how this works. A man-in-the-middle attack is a form of eavesdropping where a scammer intercepts your Wi-Fi signal or hacks into your computer or smartphone to intercept your communications with others. The attacker can then alter your communication to gain access to passwords or account information, or just copy the information that you have in your contact list. After this happens, the criminal can then alter a communication with your bank or your credit card company, so the funds go to his or her account instead of where you intended them to go, or they cash out some of your investments, or they order goods using your credit cards. So please refrain from executing any type of financial transaction on your device when using a public Wi-Fi site or using a public computer like at a library. Here's an interesting topic. Many commonplace home appliances can now have network access. So what are we talking about here? Well, it's amazing how many household appliances and commonly used home devices want to connect to your home Wi-Fi network. The more common ones are alarms, surveillance cameras, home assistants like Alexa, washers, dryers, smart TVs. They all seem to urge you to hook them into your home network. The problem is that devices like these, commonly called the Internet of Things, or IoT, are often not very well secured to begin with, and they frequently don't have instructions on how to connect securely to your home network. You can do things to secure your smart home, however, so let's look at what that is. First of all, you can make a safe use of new technology with a few commonplace practices that we'll take a look at. First of all, determine if it even makes sense to hook a given device to your home network. Does your refrigerator, your washer, even your coffee maker need to be hooked into your Wi-Fi network? Manufacturers often make it sound almost mandatory to hook up devices to operate properly, which usually is not the case. They want to get, the manufacturers and marketing companies want to get access to what your behaviors are in your home, and that's how they monitor what you do by having you put these devices on your internet. But remember this, you have the choice not to let a device into your network. Please consider what you're opening yourself up to when you put this device on your home network. Now, we do understand that some devices, like the wireless surveillance cameras, won't operate at all, or they won't operate most effectively if they're not on the network. But do you really need your washer or dryer to send you a message on your smartphone when the wash load is done? If you decide to put any home device on your network, make sure you change all associated passwords immediately and turn on two-factor authentication if it's available. Remember, we talked about two-factor authentication earlier. Be aware of this. Most of the horror stories that we hear about baby monitor cameras and other items you read about in the press come from having a device that is not secured with a complex password or two-factor authentication. And we'll talk some more about this in just a minute. A good way to isolate your home, however, for an Internet of Things devices from other systems is to do this. Hook them up to your wireless router's guest network and use a separate password to secure the guest network. That keeps them isolated on your network so that they're not interfering or exposing you to other access points on other parts of your network. Let's transition now to talk about online financial security. As more and more of us start doing more and more financial transactions on the internet, and the pandemic has really emphasized this because our financial institutions have been closed, and banking online is the preferred way to do it for many of us. But banks and credit unions have long been required to have strong security systems on their networks, and most of the online banking horror stories you read about in the press are from banking applications on the customers, that means you and me, on the customer's system being compromised in some way. And so that's a big message that we have today, is how to keep your system from being compromised and exposing you to financial harm. Well, we've already mentioned this, but I'll say it again because it's really important. Keep the browser software and hardware current. One of the things that I want to point out here is one of the key reasons so many entities, particularly banking institutions and any other computer system, including major corporate systems, are vulnerable and they fall victim to a system hack. The reason is that they have not kept their systems updated with the latest releases. If you read the stories that come out, somewhere in that story, it'll probably be mentioned, but not emphasized enough, that the computer system of that particular company was 2 or 3 or 4 phases behind in updating the software that the software manufacturers had supplied them with. So we don't want to become a victim because we forgot to do that. So luckily, the basic steps we've been discussing will protect the banking applications along with all the other apps you use on your laptop or smartphone. So make it a habit to monitor your bank account transactions regularly to make sure you spot any unusual activity early. If you do, immediately contact your bank or credit union and start asking questions. So monitoring your account activity is extremely important to do. There's more that relates to online financial security, which we'll also talk about. The government fair credit laws require the 4, yes, there are 4 credit reporting agencies to give you a free credit report annually. The 3 major reporting agencies are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, which we're more familiar with. But Innovus is another company that provides credit reporting and is required to provide free reports as well. They just aren't nearly as large or as widely used as the big 3. One good technique in monitoring your credit accounts is to set up a system where you ask for free annual reports from one of the 3 major agencies or the 4 major agencies every 3 months. That way you can get a fresh check on your credit report every quarter for free. Here's another hint. If you tend to buy a lot online, you should have 1 or 2 designated cards for your online purchases and stick to using them exclusively for any online purchases. That way, if you see other online transactions on another card, you are automatically alerted that something is wrong and your card may have been compromised. Some card issuers actually have the service of giving you a credit card with a one-time use on it. And I don't know how popular that is, but it's another option for shopping online if you don't do a lot of it, but you want to do it one time and keep your credit card information private. You can ask your card issuer to give you a one-time use card. Here's something else to be cautious of. When you physically use your cards at an ATM or gas pump or any other device that skims the stripe on the back of the card, be alert to anything unusual with the card slot or keypad. If it appears to be loose, stained, or damaged in any way, don't use it. There is a skimmer attached to it, most likely, and they're capturing the information on the electronic stripe of your card. Most cards these days come with an electronic chip, which is more secure than the magnetic stripe on the back of the card. But it's only a matter of time until the scammers are going to figure out how to read that chip as well. The newer cards also have the no-touch feature that you just hold the card up to the reading device and it captures the information that's in the card electronically for processing the transaction. Here's something many people don't want to hear, but I like to pass this advice along anyway. Consider entirely eliminating the use of your debit card to pay for things. I know debit cards are very popular and everybody has one and they use them all the time, but here's what you're exposing yourself to. Debit cards offer a criminal a direct line to your checking account if stolen, and they can easily empty or even overdraw your account with it. Now, banks are typically not required to replace funds stolen from your account this way, but almost always they do to maintain good customer relationships. Credit card fraud, on the other hand, the losses there are limited by law and regulation to $50 when you report your missing or stolen credit card promptly. And most banks will monitor and stop credit card frauds for you. Here's something else to be aware of. When you use your debit card, if you choose the credit option, which you sometimes can do with your debit card, that may or may not offer some fraud protection depending on the bank and their services. You are not using your debit card as a credit card in the same way when you do that, and the precautions don't apply. The credit debit choice has more to do with how the transaction is processed than anything else. Well, let's talk about phishing. Probably you've heard about this and maybe even have experienced. Emails and text messages are a part of life these days. There's no getting out of that. And you may have heard of phishing relating to emails. I get phished almost every day. I'm seeing phishing attempts in text messages too, that they clearly know my name, my phone number, and my address, and they want me to call a number or click on a link, and for some reason. It's very, very scary. And it's tempting and easy to fall victim to something like this. So what is phishing, and how can you spot it and defend yourself against it? Well, phishing is the act of sending an unknown recipient, that would be you or me, a fake email or a text message in the hopes that the recipient, you or me, will open the email or text and click on an attachment or a link in the body of it. They are then forwarded to a website. If we do that, we click on the link, we're forwarded to a website for personal information or other, our computer is infected with a virus or other malware. So phishing emails can range from being almost comic in their crude spelling and punctuation to extremely convincing and realistic enough to fool even the experts. So how do we determine whether or not an email is a phishing attempt? I'm going to show you some slides and point out some things on an email that will help you identify whether this is a legitimate email or not. You know, this is very important because some experts believe that phishing and spam emails and texts make up more than half of all of the traffic on the internet today. You cannot totally escape the fish, so what do you do? We're going to look at how to identify a potential phishing email. This is very important. As we look closely at this email, there are 3 indicators here that it is not a legitimate email and in fact may be trying to set you up for harm. So let's look at those 3 things. First of all, look at the top line where the arrow is that says 1 messages waiting to be read terrorist. Ignoring the poor English, which is obvious, what's with this extra word terrorist? That's the trick phishing scammers are using to try to fool programs that try to catch spam and phishing emails before they get to your inbox. If you see an email with a random word attached to the subject line, that's a dead giveaway that the sender is trying to evade anti-spam tools, and the email probably just should be deleted immediately. What do we want you to do with any suspicious email you get? Delete it. Let's take another look at this email. Look at it again. See another indicator here that this is not a legitimate email and is very likely a phishing attempt. This is an email, if you look at it, supposedly from Facebook. But you see that the return email address, that arrow up there, isn't from anything resembling facebook.com. Delete it. Also, if you hover your cursor over the links in the body of the email and look at the bottom left corner of the browser window, you can see where clicking on that link will take you. In this case, they all would take you to a website in Russia. It's shown there as recognizable from the .ru in cookspaint.ru. This clearly has nothing to do with Facebook. What do you do with any suspicious email you get? Delete it. Don't click on the unsubscribe link or the button at the bottom of the email, like in this example. It might take you to a bad website anyway. At the very least, it sends a response back to the scammer that this is a live email address and might be worth more effort. One thing it won't do is unsubscribe you from future phishing emails. So hopefully looking at an example of a phishing email and showing you the clues to look for in the body of the email will help you not become a victim of a phishing email or text. So what do you do to avoid phishing scams? Here's some important things to know to protect yourself. First of all, neither the government nor banks or credible merchants will ever ask for a personal account or information by email or text. And those are usually always the things in a phishing email that they're looking for. And never respond to requests for personal information like your social security number or account number or birth date or Medicare number. Another hint, don't open the files or click on the links or download programs sent out by these strangers. Opening a file from someone you don't know could expose your system to a computer virus or spyware that captures your passwords or other information. And of course, beware of messages that are just too good to be true. They probably are. The Kiplinger editors say that this is the #2 top scams that seniors fall for, offers that are too good to be true. And if someone says you're a winner and asks you to fill out a form with your personal information, don't be tempted to start filling it out. Do a little research first. Beware of emails asking you to claim your reward from Ace Hardware, Walgreens, Costco, Amazon, Best Buy, or some other well-known company. This tempting offer is most likely not legitimate. I personally see these types of emails almost every day. The originator or sender is never the company named. The reward or prize for responding is not the $50 or the $100. At best, if you decide to respond or to claim your prize, as they say, all you get is an entry into a lottery to win. Not worth the exposure, not worth the risk. I also see emails or text messages for an attempt to make a delivery from the post office or from FedEx or Amazon or UPS. Those are very often phishing attempts, especially if you're not expecting any such delivery. Delete it. You can be tricked into thinking an email is from someone you know and trust. If you see a message from someone you know that doesn't seem like them, their account may have been hacked by a criminal who's trying to get more information from you. So be careful how you respond, and always check with that other person before responding if you have some serious doubts. The best way to protect yourself is to always thoroughly read these messages. Does the sender's address differ from his or her name, like they have 345 boo at Yahoo instead of Mike Jones? Are the tone and spelling and grammar off the mark? They seem odd in the message. Here's another one. Do emails that are supposedly from businesses end with a Hotmail address or a Gmail address or a Yahoo address rather than the companyname.com or companyname.org? All of these are scams. Another important tip is when you're on a site when the address begins with HTTPS, it's more than likely secure, but this isn't guaranteed. Hackers have been known to mislabel web addresses to indicate they are secure when in reality they're not. All right, let's spend a little time talking about COVID-related scams. Remember we said a cyber crime is anything that criminal activity that is somehow related to the internet or to your computer, and there have been a lot of these scams regarding COVID recently. So let's look at some of them. In fact, the FTC reports that scam activity has exploded up over 400% during the COVID-19 pandemic. And total losses to fraud was reported in the billions. But again, it's likely that there was way more money lost than was ever reported. So here's what we know from the data that's been collected. The median loss reported in a COVID scam is over $300. And regrettably, older people suffer even higher losses. The median loss for someone in their 70s is almost $450. And for someone in their 80s, it's $750. The number one complaint is online shopping. Goods not delivered, not as promised. Return policies and warranties not honored. So we're all isolated, scared, vulnerable, worried about health and finances. It's the perfect storm for scammers. Criminals see opportunity and they take advantage of it. Hundreds of bogus websites have been shut down. I saw recently that over 100 websites that purportedly were selling Clorox products, but they were fake products, was shut down by the FTC. Warnings issued to companies selling unapproved products, non-delivery of non-existent medical supplies, and personal protective gear, and price gouging, all reports of cyber criminal activity on the internet. And as new information becomes available, scammers use it to their advantage. So here's what we're saying. Be suspicious of anyone calling, texting, emailing, going door to door, even offering free testing or wanting to sell supplies or home test kits. Stay within your known health provider's system. There are legitimate agencies open 7 days a week to answer your questions and refer to you appropriate agencies. And we'll provide some of that information shortly. Also, the FBI is reporting phony pop-up sites. Their advice is to be suspicious of sites that are not affiliated with a known hospital or clinic. Avoid those especially touted on social media. And please exercise caution when responding to any offers or claims, and know that robocalls related to medical and healthcare are increasing. And here's a scam that I just became aware of within the last few days. Fake posts on Facebook for sites mimicking the vaccine manufacturers are asking viewers to respond to a survey of their experience with the vaccination. Don't fall for it. Scammers will trick you into sharing sensitive information that should not be shared. And I'm going to show you in this next slide this website. The website that I took a picture of doesn't say warning fake COVID-19 vaccines at the top. I added that in. But emails and texts and social media posts are wanting you to complete a survey about your experience with the vaccine. They sometimes will offer a gift or a reward for doing so. All you have to do is just pay for shipping. It's a scam. The scammer will then get your credit card or debit card number, and you are not likely to ever receive any reward. And additionally, they may also ask in the survey for your personal identification data, like Social Security number, birth date, address, Medicare, all similar kinds of data that are used in accessing the vaccinations. Don't respond to surveys of any kind unless you want the risk of being a scammer's victim. Well, here are some examples of the coronavirus scams as well. You know, the most recent stimulus money provided by the government, I think they're almost done distributing it, but there are still cases, and there have been cases where crooks are using alleged information about an individual's, past activities that were illegal. And they contact you and say, we need to verify your eligibility to receive this stimulus check. And that can come through an email or a text or a robocall. And they frequently ask for things like your bank account, your social security number, or other personal information. Please don't be tempted to do that. Hang up or delete the message. The IRS informs us they will never text or email you asking for personal information. You know, the charity fraud, we're all concerned these days about what the pandemic is doing to our economy, our culture, as well as the many natural disasters. And so it's not unusual to get solicitations to make a charity contribution. And crooks, they see an opportunity, they take advantage of it, they pose as charity organizations and ask for your donations. But it's likely that they're not legitimate charities. If you want to make a donation, we encourage you to contact a charity directly and not make contact through an email, a Facebook page, or any other social media platform. Here's one that's also very popular. It's called the tech support scam. Personally, a friend of mine recently lost over $600 and exposed her credit union account number to one of these scams. You may get a pop-up window, an email or a phone call saying your PC is infected with a virus or malware, or that it's being used illegally, and you must work with the contact person to correct the problem. You may be directed to click on a link in an email. They will want money and access to your computer. It's a scam. Microsoft or Google will not contact you that way with such a message. And here's something else that comes up too. It's come up on my computer. Sometimes you get a warning not to turn off your computer or disconnect from the internet, or your computer will be locked and you'll lose all your files and programs. Don't believe it. Turn off your computer immediately. That stops the activity. You can wait a few minutes and turn your computer back on, and that scam warning will be gone. Well, here are other ways to reduce your risk by, taking advantage of the Fraud Watch Network. Minnesota State has an excellent website with abundant information on all matters related to the coronavirus. You can also call the number listed here. They're open Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 8 to 5 on weekends, easily accessible. If you have questions concerning the stimulus check from the government, the IRS advises they are the only source for this information, only the IRS, but beware of scammers who are pretending to be from the IRS. Also note that AARP additionally offers information specific to the coronavirus, general fraud prevention, cybersecurity, brain health, and more. We invite you to check out our website, to see what we have available. And here's a promo for AARP. If you are interested in scheduling an online presentation for 10 or more participants, please contact us. We're here to help. We look forward to talking with you. Okay, as we near the end of our presentation today, let's do a quick recap of some of the more important steps that we pointed out that you can take care of to help secure your online privacy and prevent ID theft. We mentioned again, you can review your credit reports as frequently as once a week for the next few months, and that's due to the prevalence of the COVID-related scams. You know, the previous slide said you can do it, 3 times a year, but you can actually do it once a month for the rest of this year. But once this special access period passes, you can obtain your credit report from the major reporting agencies once a year. We have information about this process on our handout, or you can go to the website that we had on the page. It's www.annualcreditreport.com. Be sure you go to this address exclusively. There are fake ones to avoid. There is no charge for this service when you go to this site, so don't be tricked into paying a fee on a deceptive scammer site. Again, a reminder to update your computer system components, the modems, the routers, the browsers, the applications, and be sure you have a virus protector software installed on your system, and be cautious when opening files that you are not sure what they are. But the best way to protect yourself against scammers posing as friends, the government, or financial institution is to always thoroughly read the message and look for clues that it's a scam. We showed you how to do that. Does the sender's address differ from his or her name? Are the tone, spelling, grammar odd, off the mark? Are signature titles overly generic or flat out weird? And do emails from businesses end with Hotmail, Gmail, Yahoo address rather than the companyname.com or companyname.org? You can protect yourself. I encourage all of you to visit AARP's Fraud Watch Network, and you don't have to be a member of AARP to access it. In addition to free information on resources online at aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork, you can sign up for free watchdog alerts that you'll receive by email every 2 weeks. The alerts will keep you up to date on the latest ways criminals are targeting you as a victim. On the Fraud Watch Network site, you can also take advantage of our scam tracking map when you see reports of scams and read about scams reported by others around the country and close at home. And also the Fraud Watch Network site, you can find out what to do if you or someone you know has been victimized. Again, I say if you or someone you know has been a victim of fraud, contact our AARP Fraud Watch Network call center at 1-877-908-3360. We have a call staff staffed by volunteers who will take your reports of fraud and can sometimes offer helpful advice. Here's how you can stay in touch with our Minnesota State Office. Like our Facebook page for Fraud Watch Network updates, including videos and warnings on the latest scams, and follow us on Twitter at AARPMN and on our website. So with that, we conclude our presentation, and we will now open it up to questions. And if you have questions that have been put in the chat box, we'll answer those, or we'll take live questions as well. So Alex, or whoever's out there.
Mike had a question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but you were asking, once you have selected for a website to remember your username, is there a way to undo that?
That's a very good question, actually. I meant to talk a little bit about that, because A lot of times when you set up on a web application or a website, your user ID and your password, the browser will ask you if you wanted to remember those credentials. And if you say yes, then that information is going to be stored on your computer in that browser. And if your computer gets hacked, that becomes exposed. If you click no on that option, then it doesn't say that information and you have to re-enter it every time you go to a website. And the question was, how can you undo that? Well, one of the safest ways to undo that is to change your password. Go to that website, you can change your password, and then when you sign onto that site and your browser asks if it wants you to remember that for you, click no. And then you've taken out the previous record and you're safe again. Is that helpful?
Yep,
Yeah.
that explains it. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
I didn't see any other questions in the chat, unless anyone has a live question here.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, we have one question here.
Good.
Okay, they call me on the phone, and I'm not sure if this is relevant, but they call me from the local businesses, from Mayo Clinic, from St. Mary's Hospital. How are they able to do that?
I'm sorry, how or why do they do that? What's the question?
How does that happen? Okay, they call me with a local number or a local business like St. Mary's Hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, I don't answer most of the stuff that comes through because it comes from various towns around Minnesota.
Sure.
I'm not sure about.
Yeah, there are a couple of things in the point that you bring up, which is very good. The scammers have access to phenomenal technology, and they have the ability to shadow a telephone number and make it look like the call that they're placing to you is coming from a local number, just like what you said. When in actuality, they could be in Ukraine or the Philippines or Jamaica, any place in the world, and making that phone call look like it's coming from a neighbor or someone in your community. That's one of the ways they deceive us. If Mayo Clinic or some other legitimate business is trying to contact you, they'll leave a message for you if you don't answer the phone. So your practice is very good. Don't answer the phone if you don't feel comfortable in doing it. If it's a legitimate business, they'll leave a message and you can follow up on that message with them. And also, even if you follow up and you get the scammer's number that you call back, and they're pretending to be from Mayo or from the Department of Health, do not give them your Social Security number. Do not give them your Medicare number. Do not give them your birth date. Legitimate ones will never ask you for that in that context. So if someone starts asking that information, be very suspicious. It's most likely a scam.
Thank you.
Anything more?
I'm just double checking here. I don't see anything in the chat, so I think we're set on this side.
Well, thank you for your time. I know, Megan, we were going to share with the folks a little electronic handout.
I did upload it into the chat, so they did get that.
Yes, good.
Yeah, I
Okay.
see that on my end, so.
Yeah. This is what you have in the chat box, and I'll put it up here for you. Several resources. The senior linkage line, that's a great resource if you've never used them. Here's how to get on the do not call list. Mostly it's effective, but not guaranteed. The AARP Fraud Watch Network number, make sure you have that available if you or someone you know has been a victim of a scam. It's a great resource. The Federal Trade Commission as well. Here's the contacts for your credit reports. Remember, it's annualcreditreport.com. That is the only website to go to. There are lots of other websites out there. If you just put annual credit report in your web browser, you're going to get lots of pop-ups that are not annualcreditreport.com. Be very careful. Some of them may be legitimate, but they're going to figure out some way to charge you a fee to give you the information that you can get for free from these credit bureaus. And there are fake ones out there as well. You have to put in very private information to get this report. You got to put your name, your address, your birth date, your social security number. Sometimes they even ask for your driver's license. And if you're putting all of that information into a scammer's website, your ID has just been compromised to the max. So be very careful. The Attorney General's office, they're very active in helping to educate people with respect to scams and providing resource and aid for those who have been victimized. The Department of Commerce, likewise. And if it comes to a serious thing to report, there's always access to the FBI. And the Minnesota Abuse Reporting Center is also a great resource to have handy. So this is in the chat box. If you have a way of printing that out, you have a very handy reference sheet for who to contact if you have questions or you need help with respect to a scam, any kind of cyber criminal activity.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for your time. And obviously we got some great information. So I'll, like I say, when this is over, I can have the recording saved and share the link to those who have attended.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you all so much for your time this morning, for your interest in this particular program, for your interest in AARP. It's been my pleasure to spend some time with you today. So thank you.
All right,
Thank
everyone
you.
have a good day.
Bill.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.
Stay well.